Okay, I'm here. I have a
Oh,
minor technical thing. One second.
All right. We
Okay, I think it's
okay.
we
fixed.
love starting with technical issues.
Okay, I think it's fixed.
It's the
Everybody, you can hear everything?
I can
All
hear and
good?
see you
Okay.
well. I think everyone
Okay.
can. Yeah.
Okay, good. Guys, welcome. Welcome
Okay.
everybody to the Great Transition.
That's where we are.
We
Welcome.
where where you learn, we speak about, we integrate with each other and this ancient wisdom and this modern world and through this prism of spirituality or through the prism of the world, actually, maybe go the other way, through the prism of the world, we arrive at what are the forces behind what's happening, why it's happening, what is the process. We all feel that something's going on. What is the process that we're in, and how to understand this unique historic time that we find ourselves in, this transition that we're in from these primitive type of people into a more spiritual existence. Chris, your lighting looks great today. You look you're radiating. Yeah, or it's your Zoom filter. Um, this in spirituality. Anytime we're talking about spirituality, the smallest spiritual object is made up of 10 parts. There's nothing in spirituality that's not made up of 10 parts. So anywhere that you examine in something spiritual, the lowest part you'll find even a part of the highest part, and the highest part you'll find even part of the lowest part. Everything is always 10. Our world is a branch from that spiritual root. And so we can already, as students of the wisdom of Kabbalah, we can start to feel how the future generations will arrange themselves. What is the optimal form that humanity will take in order to absorb spiritual forces, in order to become similar to that spiritual structure, to be in harmony um, and perceive those higher levels of perception of whatever. Okay, let's just leave it at that. When you look at the book, the writings of the sages, for example, like the Talmud, and you have hundreds of pages about, it looks like financial transactions. If he does this to you, then you have to pay him that. But if she then that, then he doesn't have to pay, or he does have to pay. And from our, or just any of those books, when you look at it just through our eyes, doesn't always make sense because our eyes are perceiving things from our 100 years that we're alive, or if we've only been alive 50 years or 40 years, like you young fellows. So you only have that much
Appreciate it.
experience or whatever you studied to
You
understand
just
life.
invited some old jokes at you, which will come later on. But because we can talk a lot about history today.
I know more.
That's
So
true. That's true.
It's
if we
true.
look at reality or read the texts from a flesh and blood perspective, it doesn't make sense. But if we understand that there's some kind of eternal law, meaning some endless structure, this we're calling it the spiritual structure, then these calculations aren't based on, oh, so uh, you took this money and then he needs to pay it back, but the judge says he doesn't need to pay it back because the true judge sees what happened last lifetime. Actually, he's actually paying back a debt from like 2 lifetimes ago, or actually he's making an investment for 3 lifetimes from now. And we don't know that just when we're reading the text and if we're seeing it kind of through our flesh and blood eyes. But if we okay, so the point is that we will start to once we arrange ourselves in the same way that spirituality is arranged in that in 10, the future humanity, the Kabbalists are clear about how humanity will arrange itself in these groups of 10. Somehow what exactly that means, not clear, but that people will arrange themselves in these kind of groups, and how they'll do that, because through something like that, through that many eyes, you can start to perceive spiritual reality. You enter into a system where you're not just seeing the world through your 2 eyes, but that's enough. You don't need 20 or 50, but that structure is enough that all of a sudden, not all of a sudden actually, but that structure is enough that you can perceive reality beyond your flesh and blood body. You can perceive.
That sounds good.
Yeah, right. So that's how they describe where we're going. So
Where are we going?
that's where we're going, to perceive that. That is
Let's
how
go.
that's how we will arrange ourselves in order to perceive a reality that's eternal, which we really exist in. So to feel beyond.
there's a non-material structure, a fractal-like structure of reality that repeats itself, and it is referred to as ten sfirot in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and that's the structure that allows holding the quality of spirituality. It's only from
Say
the
the
connection
eternal
between
light. That's
these.
the kind of vessel that can hold the endless eternal light.
Right, and we human beings
life.
are on our way to discovering our access to that existence, our perception of that reality. Everything that's happening between us human beings, including our conflicts and our social dynamics and politics even, and voting or not voting, and everything that's happening is on our way to discover actually a completely different level of relationship between us that is based on our hearts, and it's non-material, and it's a different configuration. And when we get there, we'll actually discover that we are different beings than we actually think, than what we think we are. And this whole reality is not physical, we are
Right.
not bodies, and so on. That's
Right.
like
The
in
world
a
that we-
nutshell.
The world that we build for ourselves when we walk out of the house in the morning, or when we're walking into the kitchen, is based on our current perception. What goes in these eyes and in these ears and in this nose, right? That's how we're not thinking and feeling about what's happening 3 houses down. We don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't anything it. Doesn't even exist to us. But through entering the structure, we see reality. It's called through all of these eyes, to the point where you see reality through the eyes of every person. That humanity is actually as if one man. Doesn't mean that you're even limited to just seeing what's going on Earth, though. You're seeing that structure allows you to see all of reality. Let's call it like that. So when we approach the story of humanity, like you said, that this is the process we're on of coming to be able to understand that and then reach that. The story of humanity is the story of building that creature who can become that. And let's look at each, like we're saying this to you, everyone who's with us here. Look at the story of history as the story of one man, like as your story. All of history is your story, who you were in previous incarnations, who you will become in future incarnations, and then start to see this process of development that you are going through. So, for example, in ancient Egypt, there was monarchies, right? So think about it in terms of who you were in your development through that lens. So, all the world was pretty much monarchic. Had some leader who was often like godlike, supreme. China had dynasties. You guys know about the Hamburg? I think it's called the Hamburg family. The whole thing with the chin, the Hamburg chin, and everything. You guys know about this? You
Yeah.
heard about this?
Yeah.
Asaf, you would love this. You don't know about it?
Say it again. What is it?
Habsburg, I think it's called, not Hamburg. Habsburg lineage. It's a huge dynasty. They ruled over the
Okay.
whole Roman Empire, but apparently there was so much breeding in the family.
Okay.
There's a whole chin that comes from it. Anyway, the
Oh,
sultans of the Ottoman Empire.
nice.
In the Americas, the Incas had had a godlike ruler. So if you have a godlike ruler, you have certain qualities. For example, there's cultural stability, there's economic order, there's tradition, right? Because if one family rules for 100 years, or if some dynasty in China rules for 100 years, so you have tradition, You have a way of life. It's predictable. Understandably, it could get very oppressive, right? Like if your view is different than the one who's in control, it could be a problem. And most people were farmers, so you
Yeah,
could
but
be
I think
taxed heavily.
the farther you go back in history, the less individual
Oppressive.
views existed. Essentially, I
Oh,
mean, the idea that every individual has their view and has their idea
their
and their
own Instagram and
agenda,
TikTok channel.
exactly, and their idea and their agenda for how we should live life and who should be allowed to do what. That's a fairly new thing. That's
They didn't even
something.
have last names.
Yeah, this is a couple. This is, I think, I would say, I would mark like the beginning of the U.S. as, you know, the actual beginning of this approach of the freedom of the individual becoming like a big thing in humanity. Before that, I mean, you go a couple hundred years ago, even all societies were more and more and more, you know, collectivists. I mean, we came from tribes, you know. Anyway, why am I? Where are we going?
Well, that's a big indication. That's a big
The-
indication of what of the changes that occurred. Like before, people maybe didn't really care that they had their own individual thing, and then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, like Seth always says, corrects himself. There were many changes. It goes through. It's like he said, one man, right? So there's this one thing that's like going through many changes. All of a sudden, America exists. Very important to have my own individual. I can express myself, right? Or I can hold on to my own property. And those things became very, very important. And then voting became very important, right? Which is like, hey, I need my
Yeah.
opinion. My opinion needs to be heard, right? And then you
Yeah.
have like the West kind of ideology spread also around the world where voting also is important to them, which is kind of, which makes 2024 kind of an interesting time.
so there we go. After World War One, then you get towards World War Two, you have this change happening where people don't. There's revolutions. You had the American Revolution, like you said. You had the French Revolution right after that, and there was other revolutions where people said we don't want to. We don't want to be ruled. We have our own opinions about how things should be. We have our own opinion at what people should learn, what people can listen to, how we can think, and all those things. And so people have they want to be heard. And so then you get to this very fresh, and very invigorated republic where everyone gets to vote. What a fabulous concept. Everyone gets their voice heard. This is this next incarnation in a person. But gentlemen, and please chime in here. We have a situation though.
Okay.
Voting is great if people are educated. People know something. But if you're handed a bribe in the form of a welfare check or tax incentives or carbon credits or food stamps or however, in exchange for a vote. So democracy is not actually democracy. And so this thing that started out as this beautiful new innovation, instead of having one guy who rules and controls everything, now all the people will decide their fate. But Chris mentioned, and the title of our podcast today is that there's 2 billion people going to the polls in 2024 to vote.
And you know, from what I looked, maybe it's even
Could be
4 billion.
more.
Maybe it's even. I mean, right, Chris? Did you look
Could be
at it?
more.
I sent you.
I guess maybe
question.
we'll find out. Someone's got to be counting, but yeah.
Yeah, if
I mean,
anyone out
I
there
saw some.
knows-
Our show title says, "Can 2 billion people change the future?" But the 2 billion voters. But I mean, the headlines I'm seeing, some of them are saying it could be up to 4 billion. I mean, that's a huge range there between 2
You have
and 4.
eligible voters, and you've
So-
got
you think
people
that's
who are
the
actually going to the polls.
that's the story?
Probably.
So I guess
Maybe.
the prediction, maybe the prediction is for, you know, the actual amount of people will be 2 billion, but the people who are eligible are about 4 billion. I guess, I don't know.
That's
Or
a
Or
huge discrepancy, but that's still a lot of people.
yeah, but even if it's just
2
2
billion.
billions, that's
Even if
that's,
it's just 2.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, this
It's
is
a
big. This
lot
is
of
big.
people.
There's almost what 8 billion. Are we over 8 billion people these days? I'm not sure.
Well, are we closer
But
to 9 than 8? But this is not. This is historical. This is unprecedented. This has never happened when you talk about 70 countries at the
Right.
same time in one year is having an election year, and then 70 countries, I guess, translates to 2 or 4 billion people, which it's kind of interesting. I don't know. We've never
I
really heard of voting spoken about in this light
did
before.
did, did you see some of the did you guys see some of the videos talking about it, and then they show imagery from like India and Bangladesh and all kinds of places that um, not necessarily the Western world, but there's basically democratic elections in these places as well, and
Basically.
I found it really really anthropologically interesting to watch these images all of a sudden, because you see, I mean, what you see is basically different. It's clearly like the people in India, they have their own garments and their own clothing. It's very different from the people from us, like here, right? They're just dressed differently. But they're still
Yes.
holding like placards, and they're protesting or they're rallying, and their candidates are standing behind podiums, and you see the same thing.
That hasn't changed, huh? Yeah. I see
Yeah,
what you're saying.
but this is really cool, because you see, when you see suddenly like the imagery, basically all of 2024 is full of these elections, and they've already started. And throughout the year, it's not exactly the same time the world is choosing, but throughout the year. So they kind of, I saw an article, a video article, where they showed like images from many different places around the world, and all of a sudden I'm seeing that it's a very strange thing that you have human beings in their different kind of like cultural setting, but they're actually engaged in the same kind of organizational behavior. You know what I mean? Like from a zoom out perspective, it's really interesting, because okay, let me I know why this hit me. I had to be in the army here, right? Just a few weeks ago.
Right.
I had to. So this is a very bizarre thing. I had to go and dress up as a soldier for 2.5 months. I was there, and all of a sudden I'm with a bunch of other people, and we're all dressed up in these uniforms, and I'm now supposed to like serve the organism, basically, that is the IDF. And inside my little corner, like what I had to do, I had limited choice, and essentially within that very limited area of choice in terms of the stuff that I had to do, I clearly had to do things that will serve the whole organism. And it's a very bizarre thing that from an individual's point of view, you don't notice it. But if you zoom out, you're seeing humans creating these patterns, these structures, and so in a similar way, when I looked at those politics imagery, like people behind podiums and people with placards, and like people rallying around them, and the news anchors, and in each place around the world right now, in this year, they're in their different cultural settings, but they're engaged in the same thing. This is like, and when you look at it, when you zoom out and you look at humanity like an organism, like cells in a body, or like ants in an anthill, or bees, or whatever, you're seeing that basically there's this picture very clearly of a collective, and this time a global organism that is like, this is our current way. Politics is the current method for human society to reorganize itself. And it appears in that funny way of these political campaigns, these popularity contests, and the people speaking behind the podiums, and the people with rallying, and the news anchors, and the media goes in. And in every country, I've done just a little bit of research on it. Again, just watched a few things. It's very interesting that in every country, essentially, where there's a democracy, there's always the same recurring pattern where in every political system worldwide, pretty much as far as I've seen, there's always two opposing forces. There's this idea of left and right, somehow manifests in every country where there's a where there's a democratic structure. So there's two big camps, and in between there's all kinds of little ones. There's a spectrum, but essentially it comes down to the left and the right everywhere. Everywhere. Right. And you hear these commentators saying, like in India, like these guys want that and those guys want that. In the US right now, it's a question whether Trump will be reelected again or whether it's going to be Biden. And again, from a zoomed out perspective, it's very clear that the conflict is built into the system itself. Like this is the essence of the current, what we call democracy, and what it grew into today in the 21st century. It's a system where the conflict between two opposing sides is built into the system, and I guess that's also what creates like progress and the fact that it's a constant conflict. But on the other hand, what's not built into the system, there's no method. There's no procedure there's only a procedure to try to see who's right, who will vote for, this opinion, or how many votes will that opinion get. That's what the system does. It perpetuates a certain conflict and tries to determine who's the winner. That's what the system is doing everywhere. Strip it from all of the details and the different governments and the different leaders. At the end of the day, we have a system that creates a conflict between two big camps. And we have a system to say who's going to win this time, who's going to be in power that time. That's it. So the conflict's built into the system, but there's nothing built into the system that is a procedure or a method or a way for the opposites to collaborate, build something together, coalesce into something. It's just it's non-existent.
That's specifically the difference between material reality and spiritual reality. There is no such thing in corporeal reality where two opposites can be together in harmony. It's specifically a spiritual. It's specifically a property of spiritual reality that two opposites exist together. Specifically, actually, the thing that creates the physical reality is the separation into those two systems instead of being one.
So the unification only exists. Well, a person can only perceive that there is a possible unification once they themselves are part of that system. We can observe the starlings or the school of fish, and we could see that there's some kind of yes, there's a many moving piece or a human body. You can see the result of it, but how are these different things connected together? So and the voting, it's really interesting because it's basically just war. I mean, we've talked about war for many episodes before, but it really is just war. And if you're not voting, then the war continues and trying to get the vote for the next year, right? So it's just constant. It's this thing that's almost kind of lost its taste. People are going to vote, but do they feel like they're actually voting for something? And this is, I guess, where the title came from.
That's what that's what I was about to add to this. I think that's where we're stuck. I mean, the system knows how to. The system we call politics, democracy in the 21st century, it knows how to perpetuate conflict between these two parts. And again, conflict is a part of progress. I'm not saying that, we should all be just, not have our own individual opinions and not compete and there needs to be some, different things and different opinions and different views. But because there's no system to coalesce them, to bring them together to a new whole, that incorporates the opposites, because we don't have that system. And Seth's right, we don't even have that that it's a whole perception of reality that we need to develop for this. But because we don't have that, that's why I think we are gradually feeling more and more how stuck we are. Things don't really change for the better. You solve one problem, you get another bigger problem. You change this leader to that leader, problems still, some of the problems just still remain. There's political distrust. There's always distrust between and it's growing, I would say, between the public and the leaders. We're on the swing. It's left, this, and now it's the left, now it's the right, now it's the left, now it's the right. But are we really improving? Are we really, solving problems? We're kind of stuck.
And you don't even have to ask that question. Yeah. We know.
The spiritual structure, the primordial spiritual structure, the 4 phases of direct light, the first emanation from the world of Ein Sof, that process, each new phase is completely opposite from the one that came before it. And the process of development, Bala Sulam uses that incredible analogy in the Freedom article that the wheat stalk grows. Let's talk about eternal wheat, right? Wheat that it will exist eternally, but it changes its form. So the wheat stalk grows, the seed falls off, the seed rots in the ground, a new one sprouts, a new one grows with 1,000 seeds, and those 1,000 seeds rot, and they fall to the ground, and they rot, and now you have 1,000,000 seeds, right? Eternally. But the process of rotting is specifically the process that it's the end of a cycle before the new one can be born. You can't actually, it's a spiritual root that in order to get to the next part of the process, a total rotting and death of
yeah, you just inspired something, but
he's been inspired.
No. No, when you said 4 phases, something just kind of clicked. I'd love to share it, but it'll take me like 2 minutes to get there, like to set it up. Okay, we
no
don't.
Better time
this is
than
what
now.
we paid for. Let's go.
We don't realize. I don't think many people realize, at least. But we are possibly entering a completely different era. Not a good one, unfortunately. Like, it's weird to.
I don't think you have to convince anyone.
You
have to convince anyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you open your eyes a little bit, you see it. But we've gotten used to. I think modern, especially in the West, modern human beings got used to the idea that we have relative peace in the world. It's not actual peace, but it's relative peace. We have our iPhones, and we can watch Netflix, and it's okay, people can live life, kind of thing. And that was the case for the last 80 years, let's say, right? 80 years since World War II. Yeah, 80 years. I think it's 79 exactly. I mean, the World War II ended in 45, I think, right? Anyway, we're getting close to this 80-year period. So it's not that there was global peace in the last 80 years, obviously, but it's like always here something, there something, this event, that event, little war here, little war there, kind of thing. Nothing super major. And this might be changing right now. We're entering possibly an era where humans are fighting on a massive scale. Despite all the technology and all of the culture and media and iPhones, we might be going into this kind of period. Now, as I'm saying it, I realize some people will say, okay, fear-mongering. It sounds like, okay, what is it? The 2012 kind of thing, Satan's gonna come. And no, I'm talking statistics. Everything in nature follows patterns. There's a birth, growth, maturation, decline, and death in everything that's happening.
No one likes death. We don't like the death. We don't like the dark part of it.
It's part of nature, and it's part of evolution. And many models show that humanity evolves in cycles. Now, I'll connect it in a second to the 4 phases thing. There are sociologists who found a model that shows, for instance, they've researched Yeah, for the last 500 years. They found a model that shows that basically every 80 to 90 years, there's a cycle that repeats itself. And they've seen it
Yeah.
happening 7 times already in the last 500 years. And essentially, it's built from 4 stages, where in the first stage,
Just like the
which is-
seasons, you know?
just like the seasons, just like 4 phases, which I'll connect to in a second. But essentially, they're talking about four stages in this cycle that repeats itself again and again. And in the first stage of the cycle, you have the ideologues of the society, like the visionaries, the intellectuals that come up with like new idea, you know, and it could be, the new idea could be anything, you know, it could be freedom of the individual, pursuit of happiness, you know, the collective, what was the French Revolution thing, whatever, you know. You see like these new ideas. Then in the second stage, you have doers, people who are like performing, you know, and executing these ideas. Then in the third stage, you already have some value crisis that is developing, cynicism and criticism and anti-establishment, and no, we want to do the opposite, we want to do something else. And then the last stage is already like reformers, basically, you know, people who are doing what they're doing to change the thing. But towards the end of every cycle, again, this is history, right? Towards the end of every cycle, everything converges to a major crisis. And there's a book called The Fourth Turning. If someone's interested, you can look into it. So the sociologist there suggests that the current crisis, we are at the end of a cycle. And the current cycle,
Sia column or something like that. That's like
yeah. That's how they call the cycles. Yeah. You're right. Anyway, so he, for instance, suggests that the current crisis we're in started in 2008 with the 9/11 and you know not 9/11, the financial crisis of 2008, and will just get confused with something else, and it will go basically into maybe the early 2030s. So essentially, we're now at this point, and I remember.
How much longer do I need to hang out and wait until it gets good?
Right.
But where can I go? Is there a place I can go for a few years?
No, it's just you just turn on your phone, you put on your Vision Pro, and you just zone out. I don't want to see that. I want to see something else.
We'll get to the Vision
Pro.
Pro.
Into the Vision Pro.
Wait, so the reason I went into all that, sorry, that was a little long, but what clicked for me was, remember I told you a while ago that I watched a conversation between our teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, and a futurist from 15 years ago. And he brought up this model there as part of their conversation, and then, you know, for Dr. Lightman, like our teacher, it was like, yeah, of course, because the ego develops through 4 stages of development, which is essentially, you know, coming from that 4 level structure or pattern of creation, which is actually the same 10 sfiot that we're talking about. I know that for people who are Kabbalah beginners, you know, we just said 4. Why is it 10? The 4 is actually 10 if you look at it in a certain way. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but basically what we're seeing in history, in humanity, and right now, the time we're in, it's a pattern. There are patterns all of nature. Throughout all of nature, there are patterns, and we humans are part of it as well. And the ultimate, like the foundational pattern from that Kabbalists have found is this 4 phases of direct light, or that ultimately creates 10 qualities. Anyways, that are one.
But I don't like the phase. I don't like the phase where it's like where I have to think about my life changing dramatically. Maybe I'm going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, we invented refrigerators because the food was going to get spoiled, and we don't want it to spoil, you know, as fast. We want to like hold on to the food a little bit longer, right? So,
yeah.
Did you see that? I'm gonna pull a Seth real quick, and for some reason it just reminded me of like of this video. Someone saw of like this. I don't know if it was I think it was a squirrel, but he's like this animal had been like hoarding acorns inside their wall, And he's like, yeah, I found it. And he like moves the thing that's like blocking the acorns from falling out of the wall. And they're just like pouring out. He's like, oh my God, there's still, there's so much here. It's like we're just like hoarding all of our as much like of the good feelings that we can, and we just want to ignore that we're coming into a crisis, maybe a little bit, hold on to our Netflix a little bit longer. Yeah, I'll just go and vote even though maybe I don't feel like it's going to do anything. It's like we're kind of stuck, and we're not looking at this pattern. There is a pattern, right? So if we're okay, we can verify that we're for sure in some kind of pattern. Let's acknowledge the fact that a change is coming, and we need to do something about it. You can't just sit idly. So what are we doing?
But the
Right.
difference is that, in Game of Thrones, like winter is coming or whatever they said, right? So
I
when
never
that
saw it. I never got into
when
it.
that winter comes, it's cold, it's hard. So it's Asaf didn't just give us like a death warning, like, oh, this is coming in the next years, and therefore batten down the hatches and get your guns ready because it's going to be all out war. It means that through my own eyes, I'll perceive this process of rot that's happening, but through the spiritual eyes, I understand that all of reality is constantly going through this this never-ending zivug, like this never-ending um, process of fulfillment, uh, and that there's no part of it that's bad. So through our two eyes, it seems like it, and through this absolutely futile process of going to the polls to vote after I've been thoroughly brainwashed by the mass media to vote for things that are totally against my own benefit, because I can never actually benefit when there's other people who are actually in control who don't tell me really what they're doing and how they're sucking the resources out of me and taxing me to the hilt and taking all the resources for themselves and doing insider trading and doing all the crap. So my vote doesn't really mean anything.
This is right along the line of I just peeked at the chat for a second, and I see Patricia
Mhm.
says, the last time I voted, I said to myself, I don't know any of these people or what they believe. That was many years ago, and I never voted again. I mean,
Mm.
I think that is such a good example. It really embodies what we talked about, that we have like this conflict built into the system, but it's like it almost doesn't even matter anymore who's this side and who's on that side. There's no nothing built into the system to create the next level of development, which is where the opposites find a way to put together a greater whole. Where the one and one become three, or
Mm.
whatever you want to. And I think this is where it's going, where more and more distrust and more disillusionment from this system will grow. But positive changes, when will that happen? When will we
This is a
actually
perfect. It
see?
can.
No.
This is a perfect opportunity for all of the positive changes that we want to see, and not specifically through going to the polls and voting, but through a transformation in our relations between us. The that time of rot, that time of rot went from monarchy to a republic, or to democracy where people could vote. Initially, it was something fresh and good. We don't have one guy who's going to decide what's going to happen with my life. If we have an idea and we can tell people about our idea and the idea is better and it's going to work for people, we can do that, because eventually, everything will be from the bottom up, so to speak. Meaning everything will have. The thing is that in spirituality, there's no corruption. Nobody's neglected. Nobody is robbed. Nobody's stealing anyone's resources. In spirituality, every part, the definition of what it means is that every part is whole and every part is complete. If one part serves the role of the kidney, and one part serves the role of the brain, and one part serves the role of the butt, they all have a role and they all fulfill it to the best possible. It's not like that in corporeality at all. At all.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
for us to come to a way that we can arrange ourselves in something like that means that our consciousness, we have to feel that in us. We have to arrange ourselves towards that. And then the world we will build. Like people are like, how is we should be asking ourselves, we should all be asking ourselves, how is it possible that these are the candidates? Like it's not as if like that's a candidate and that's a candidate. It's like those candidates are a reflection of the people. Because in a corrected world where everyone loved each other, if one of those people got up there and made a speech, you would nobody would even pay attention. That's what should be happening. Nobody should these people who want to just kill, these people who are taxing the hell out of you, taking half of your paycheck and spending it who knows where, and you can't get health care, and they're fighting more and more wars. We should not be in a corrected society. Nobody should think that that's correct or that there's something good about that or one of these people is better than the other one. It's the sorry. Uh,
No, we hear you fine. We hear you fine.
okay. Um,
I'll,
we,
I'll,
we
I'll,
would be
I'll
laughing at that.
and also, I mean, along the same lines, positive changes will, I mean, I really liked what you've said. Like you brought us back to the picture of the organism, right? And I mentioned like a couple minutes ago that I looked at all those images and, people voting in different places in the world. And you just see the global organism that is humanity is kind of in this year is reorganizing itself globally. But there's no actual fundamental reorganization. We're just stuck with the
No.
same system and trying to solve more problems. The problems are mounting.
It's like yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's like lotus flowers. Like it's like we're trying to exit this the Matrix. Everyone's seen the Matrix. Oh, by the way, new Matrix is coming out. But we're going to do a movie review on that.
Another one? Fifth one? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
so
what does lotus flower mean? What is lotus? Are you talking about some Hindu
A
thing?
comment. It's a user in the chat.
Named lotus flower. Sorry, lotus flower. I didn't
right.
know.
But wait, let me
So
let
what
me
did you hold on?
let
I
me
missed.
pick up
Hold
on
I
that.
just missed what happened. What
okay.
did lotus? I just got distracted. by
Say
lotus
that
flower.
comment again, Chris. About the
Lotus flower said, "Are we trying to exit? Are we trying to
Matrix.
exit the Matrix through changes to come?"
Ah.
Which is kind of a good way to say it.
Okay, so I'll talk about exiting the matrix for a minute, right? So if this is an organism, we are a global organism. It's a global entity, meaning that all the parts are interdependent. Yes, we feel like individuals. That's the unique organism that is made up of human beings and not ants or fish or other. We feel like very, very individualistic beings in our own world, and the world revolves around the self for us humans. And yet, if you zoom out, we're actually a collective kind of entity, and we live between this tension. Now, we want the current system that we have only perpetuates the tension. What we're missing, the tension between the individual and the collective, and therefore between groups that individuals connect to and other groups that other individuals connect to, and so forth.
Right.
What we don't have, and where the only direction for seeing positive changes is when every part of the organism and every group within the organism begins to develop concern and care for the entire organism. That's what's missing. It's so simple from a technical point of view. It's such as all of nature works this way. There's no structure in nature that survives without its pieces working for the sake of the whole thing. This is the very definition of a disease. Ultimately, any disease, when there is
Right.
some malfunction in the pieces. Well, the definition of cancer is when you have certainly some sort of a piece within the system that begins to consume the rest of the body or take from the rest of the body to work at the account of the rest of the body. That's cancer. And so that's really what we're missing. But this is an exit from the matrix, meaning if we actually begin to develop this organism, global organism perspective, this global organism concern, this global organism mindset, then we will begin to experience the global organism differently. That's already a leap, a quantum leap from corporeality to spirituality. That's where we will see that, yes, you can have opposites, different views. The kidneys, the lungs, they do very different functions, sometimes opposite functions. If you go into the human body, you have many opposites there. Meaning you have organs and cells that are working very differently, even in opposite directions, and yet they all work in a way that serves the entire body. That's what we're missing. Yeah.
It shouldn't feel like hocus pocus to anyone either that we're talking about invisible forces when a rocket needs to go somewhere in space. You don't just be like, that's where we're going. Let's pull it back far enough, and shoot it hard enough. There's so many, like, okay, a perfect example. It's called the internet. Hold on a minute. It's called the interplanetary. I'm going to find it in a second. The gravity of this planet is pulling this way, and the gravity of this planet is pulling this way. Opposite ways.
Yep.
But in order to get the rocket, hold on. Let me just find this.
What is it? A visual? A video?
Watch. Just watch. Yeah. See this?
Yeah.
This is obviously a rendering of the interplanetary transportation network. Meaning if you want to get a rocket to go somewhere,
you have to go through the.
Watch. Hold on. Yeah.
So you have to take these gravitational fields into account, basically, because they influence where the rocket is going in space.
Okay. Look at this one as well. Just a second. I'm going to share here. So the point is, there's opposite forces. You see that, right? Okay. Yeah. There's opposite forces pulling in different directions. It's in order to move. You're not saying, oh, it's terrible that it's going to pull us all down here. No, exactly. If you use that force, you'll be launched to the next point. And it's going to pull us down. We're going to get stuck on planet X. Nope. If you launch at the right time and understand how to use the invisible forces, which we would consider them individual forces. The scientists, the Elon Musks who are shooting all their rockets, they're not invisible forces to them. They're very, very real.
Yeah.
In fact, when they're sending their billions of dollars of rockets into space, they're using them as partners to get them where they're going. It's a great example for us here. We don't have to look at this rot, for example. That's a word we're using as some.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Is he
Man
stuck?
down.
Is he froze? Did he freeze? Okay, he's back. I think
he froze.
You froze there for a couple seconds.
Okay, so I'm responding to Lotus Flower. Can you hear me? You see me?
Yeah, now we hear you and see you. There was just a minor.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be surprised at all, and we should get used to invisible forces. We should get much more used to it, because just seeing from our own eyes, we don't see, and we won't be able to see the spiritual perspective. But just by something as simple as sending a rocket to space, as simple, but something that's common these days, we can see how we're already relying all the time on individual forces in order to move, to propel us forward.
Okay. Well, you can say that no one likes change. You can say no one likes change, right? It's a thing that every human feels. So what does change mean? It means I have to let go of what I have now and adopt this kind of like new thing. So of course you're going to feel resistance to that. And so in the meantime, you've got things like the Vision Pro, which allows you to stay in and hold on to it for a little bit longer. So that's going to sign off now. He can't stand it. No, but I mean,
we made it till 9 minutes left before you had to bring it up.
Listen, because it's taking over. But I'll tell you why. Because it's a symptom of like squeezing out and like and focusing humanity's eyes. They have these blinders on the side. Like, no, only technology will save us, AI will save us, right? What's this? What is
Most
the?
of our audience has no idea, thank God, what this stupid thing is, but let's just show
Yeah, right.
people.
Right. Yeah, of
They
course
all
they know.
know?
It's all over the place.
I don't know if they know. If you have something to
Okay.
show it. But
Yeah, I don't know who this guy is, but it's this thing that you put on your
Oh
head.
yeah, Marcus Brownlee.
Is there a way to see what it actually does for you?
There it is. You don't have to. I mean, it just basically puts. It basically augments the reality that you're seeing in front. So you can see whatever you're looking at in front of you. You see the regular world, but
okay.
just with overlays,
So this is
basically.
a
Yeah. So you can, instead of
completely
holding a phone in your hand, you can
so
see it
so,
in
so
front of your
while
face.
while the world
right?
is voting itself into oblivion, we basically we have this new Apple game-changing technology that is like potentially, changing the world. Maybe will change like our
Speaking of
digital experience.
speaking of
Yeah.
perceiving invisible things, that's the wall of my office. But actually, that whole thing would be a movie where something that could make me cry and laugh would be happening right there, even though there's nothing right there.
Yeah.
It's just a wall.
So what do you think about this, Seth?
Right.
I think that
How do
this
you
is
feel
a,
about the Apple Vision
I
Pro?
feel horrible about it. I feel like it's another. When I saw the first few videos of it, it's like just that. It's like people watching movies with the thing on their face, people talking to 4 people at the same time, people logged into 10 social media accounts at the same time. I don't. I mean, it's just going to bring people to despair fast. It's so cool,
Oh,
and I'm
good.
sure it's so fun, and I'm sure it would be awesome to use, but it just delays like anyone having to deal with anything meaningful. It's just another trap to not have to deal with anything meaningful.
You
And
could
it
say it
just,
delays, or you could say it speeds up.
I'm going to say it delays.
Okay, I'm gonna say. I mean, I agree with both of you. Actually, I agree. I mean, first of all, let's look at reality. I mean, obviously, this looks very bizarre and ridiculous too. I mean, there's this other video, that we shared a couple days ago between us, where you see people on the street walking around with it and like touching invisible things and all that.
Yeah,
It's like so. On the one hand, it looks so strange and weird. On the other hand, if I told you 20 years ago, when was the first iPhone? 2007, I think. Right. So if I told you,
Yeah, 2006.
and then it only became like smartphones became ubiquitous even just 2010 or something like that, right? So let's say 20 years ago. If I told you 20 years ago that a huge chunk of your day you will be doing this, to a clean surface, you would go like, what are you talking about? So first of all, I mean, and today it's second nature, right? To everyone, even my mother, so I mean, technology is interesting. I mean, what's happening with technology is really what's happening with us.
Well, let me just say real
okay.
quickly also that you even have a whole bunch. You have a lot of people also in the tech sector, like you've got the Elon Musks and all the Silicon Valley people who really do believe in like this kind of accelerationism aspect of technology, where they believe truly that technology will save all of the problems. You just develop technology as fast as you can. Eventually, you'll develop a technology that can solve all of your problems, and that's really the kind of like the line of sight that they have, and that's what they're aiming for. So you have a lot of people that are thinking that too.
Okay, let's add a spiritual spin on it. Because from a spiritual perspective, everything that's happening in this world, in what we call corporeality, in physicality, and appears to our five senses, such as the development of technology, that too is an extension, is a reflection of a process that is happening inside our souls, if you will, meaning inside our non-material being. Our spiritual mind and heart is going through some process individually and collectively, and as a result we see all kinds of things happening in the world, including the development of technology. So what is this? So here's the take, right? So there is a subconscious process essentially that's happening through technological development. So what the thought of creation, the guiding program of nature that leads us to discover ourselves as a single global organism connected to all of nature, and to discover that we're actually not who we think we are and what we think we are. That thought of creation pushes us to experiment with a different experience of reality. It's interesting. I mean, think about it. If first of all, if this reality, the physical standard material reality, was all we needed, and we never had any other lack for something else, we wouldn't develop these things. We wouldn't look for ways to augment our reality if we were happy with our reality. And
like an animal.
Right. I mean, and another thing that's interesting is, if I understand how I didn't try it yet, and I'm not going to get one, but if someone offered me, I would give it a shot. As far as I understand, you're never seeing the outside reality directly with this device, which is interesting to me, because it's
Very
essentially
similar to what's going on with us, too.
It's not like sunglasses that also show you virtual things. It covers your entire field of view, and what you're seeing is actually a screen. And the way you see the outside world is through little cameras in the device that film the outside world, capture it, and feed it to your screen. So you're never actually seeing the outside reality directly. It's always a reconstruction inside of your device, on top of which there's also digital additions, right? That's interesting to me from a poetic spirit perspective, because this is also true spiritually. We never actually are in any direct perception of what's outside of us. We're always just watching something on our own egoistic screen. Anyway, yeah.
What we learned,
this whole bit was just, the goal of it was to get Seth to say something, of course. So,
and he's finally.
it gets me very annoyed. The whole, what we learn in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that the reason why we even perceive, you have all the spiritual worlds, all the spiritual worlds cascading. Then there is a hard line, a hard stop where spirituality ends, something flips. We have these corporeal senses, and the only thing that happens now is the corporeal senses limit everything, meaning there's an infinite reality outside of me, and the only thing I feel is what enters into these holes, these small little holes. Nothing. What I can see. What can I see? Can I see past these walls? Can I see what's happening in your room? So underneath that, under the spiritual worlds, underneath that barrier, right? So after all of that process, that I'll call terrible, it's not really terrible, but like from our perspective, process that makes us totally limited, and that all we see is this. Now we're going to put another screen in front of our eyes that's also going to prevent us from doing what we need to do in order to exit this,
but
and go back into.
But it's also,
I know exactly what you're about to say. I know
say it then. Say it.
But it's also bringing us a more awareness to of what's actually, of what we are, who we are. It's showing us where we are. Like we talked about AI. Maybe that's not what you're gonna say. I can see your eyes. That's not what you're gonna say.
No,
like AI was gonna actually like
the same
show
direction,
us who we are a little bit more. You know, it's like showing us. Wait a second. How are we perceiving the world? What does it mean to perceive reality?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, our teacher said it well once years ago. You know, before we were so glued to the screens, he said that the virtual world will be a kind of a how did he call it, maavar, like a passageway or an intermediate stage between the physical world and the spiritual world. Now it's not that we need, you know, that the virtual world will take us to spirituality. No, but it's another experiment of the human being that teaches us something about ourselves, our perception, and what do we want from reality. That's what we want from reality, to add some swiping on it, to be able to by the way, one of the cool things I saw in one of those videos about the Apple Vision is that there's like a knob there that you twist it, and you go into, if you twist it all the way, you go into full immersion, meaning you don't see anything from the outside cameras. You just go into a 3D environment, and you can choose, you can kind of play with, like, I want to see more of this reality, I want to see less of this reality. I want,
Incredible. On second thought, get me
makes
one.
you think. It
Get me
makes you
one
think.
and an
There we
IV
go.
and wake me up after the world rots and it's on its way back up, okay?
All right.
Turning that thing up to 100. Give me the IV. I'm all set.
Yeah.
Friends, thank you very much. We will be back next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Guys, I am the luckiest guy in the world to have friends like you to be able to talk about the most meaningful things in life. And we're not just doing this, as something to fill an hour. We really are investing our hearts and our power and our creativity and whatever we can into spreading this, into talking about this, into building this life. We're invested in this 100%, that this is the world, this is the kind of life we want to be in, that we want everyone to be in. This is not just some informational show to learn a little bit of trivia about the four the four worlds and how the light cascaded down. This is about how we become kind of have the kind of life we want, and everyone around us has the kind of life we want in the world that we want to be in. So thank you very much. Tell your friends about the show, and we'll see you next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Thursday.
Yeah. Great.
Thursday's the day.
Do it.
See you, everybody.
Yep.
But guys,
What?
next time from
You
this
still have
place, my
the-
broadcasting the audio is always terrible.
Oh, why does that happen? Chris, you play
right.
something.
Face after face.
Yeah,
Face
no,
after
you play
race.
something. We can barely hear.
Okay, Chris, can you play?
All right. All right. So give me the share and throw me a link. But a link to the actual song you want instead of just a playlist that then I choose a song that you did. Oh, wait. I heard what it was just now. I heard what it was.
You gotta. In the meantime, I'll just say that we had with us a bunch of friends from a bunch of different places all over the world, and there are some names that I'm not even sure that I've seen here before. So it's great to see you all.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with us. Those that we are more familiar with and those that we're less. Hey, Debbie, Patricia, and Ava, and Leon, and Yetzi.
Leon had a good
and
idea. Leon says there needs to be a
Raymond.
TGT, a weekly email from TGT on all the topics we discussed with like links to different readings and things. Leon, maybe you want to join the team then.
That's an
And-
idea. Dewey.
Okay, so we'll talk about it.
And Lotus Flower. And Need to Know. Hey there. And a bunch more. Tangalora. Marilyn. Some names I can't even read. Anyway, are you playing a song for us, Chris?
Oh, wait. No, I didn't get a link from Seth, so I'm going to have to choose a random one. Here we go.
Okay.
What is this?
Go for it. Go for it. Sounded good.
That's what we did.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Love you.
We want you to know that you make our hearts sing. You do. And we need you to know this connection got us falling. You do. We come to tell you of the future. Teach love by one and all. We spend our We want you to know that you make our hearts sing. You do. And we need you to know